Teddy Covers coming to us live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Teddy Covers, happy Monday to you. How are you doing this morning, my friend?
I've had better Mondays, Jimmy, I got to say. I got my ass kicked in the NFL yesterday. How about yourself?
I had some family issues. I had to very quickly go back to Canada on Monday afternoon. So, and I did just put all my energy into family, and I just let go of all of capping. So I was just completely off. I did make a $500 bet on the Boston Bruins to win the Atlantic Division, and I got that at minus 155. And I woke up this morning, and you won't believe this, it's minus 300.
Good bet.
I was at the airport in Atlanta yesterday, and I was like, how could I be getting a minus 155? Like, it just made no sense to me. They're so far clear in that division. You know, so far clear. They're playing without Patrice Bergeron and still dominating. And I was like, this just makes no sense. I was shocked. I was like, is this a mistake? Minus 155? And then I woke up this morning minus 300, and I was like, that's right. It feels so good.
So I was talking with a bookmaker yesterday. And I'm going to leave him nameless. But I had a long conversation with him. I was over at the Westgate Superbook here in Vegas. And, sat down, hey, let's talk for a while. And one of the things we talked about is mistake lines. Do they exist? Are they real? And he's like, it doesn't happen very often, but he's like, we were talking about where the line opened in New Jersey for Ohio State, Wisconsin, and someone posted a 12.5 there, and then other people copied, and it didn't last long, but that was a bad line. Okay, a legitimate bad. Even at this stage of the season, every once in a while they can and do happen. When you're talking about getting something that's like a derivative line, something that's not getting checked every day, where they're only going to move that number if someone comes in. They're not looking at who's odds to win the division every day in the NHL. But when someone comes in and makes a big bet, you better believe they're going to look at it. That's what's going to attract the attention. So sometimes you can find a stale number like that and cash in. That is a legitimate opportunity. I give you all the credit in the world for making that bet and getting it, Jimmy, before that number moved. Obviously, as you mentioned, it moved fairly significantly over the course of 24 hours.
I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked this morning. I was like, it's one of those feelings where I was just like, just patting yourself on the back. I was absolutely shocked. We're going to talk Monday Night Football with you, Teddy Covers. But first, we want to know what your looks are on this NBA card. I've made 3 first-quarter plays, and I love them. I'm excited about this. 2 big plus lines, Knicks plus 5.5 with Dennis Smith Jr. a chance to maybe, I don't mean to be too dramatic, but save his career. He's been such trash. He looked good in the second half. Those are my looks. Is there any moves you've made on this NBA card?
So I made one. And it's funny because you and I look at the NBA in a lot of the same ways, but our approaches for betting are very different. You do a lot of first quarters. I do basically no first quarters. And I'm fascinated to track and to see, are you in these spots? Because you're playing first quarter spots. And I tend to be like, okay, here's the game spot. My game spot today stands out as Utah. Utah plus 6. I put it in my pocket as soon as the line got to 6. And it's getting back down to 5.5 again right now. But, I want the Jazz off a game in which they were outscored by 40 in the first half yesterday. That's the game I want them. And Philly keeps winning. They're not covering. They won every game on this homestand, and yet they've yet to cover a spread during the span. Philly not a good team when it comes to margins so far this season. And Utah off a loss, 9 or more this year, they've kind of bounced back every time and won straight up the next day. First meeting between these two teams decided by 2 points, and I wouldn't be surprised if tonight's meeting gets decided by 2 points. So I took the Jazz plus the 6 in Philadelphia. It's the only one I pulled the trigger on. I heard you and Jay Money talking about the Bulls, and I absolutely have the Bulls circled on my schedule today. And then when it came down to pulling the trigger, I didn't do it. Not that I won't, and if the line goes up, I may well do it. But there were 2 factors in play. It's a clear letdown spot for Sacramento. The Kings fell, world beaters the other night when they rallied to beat Denver. And now, it's a Kings team 9-1 against the spread their last 10. They're starting to build up a little bit of a betting bandwagon. And of course, Bogdanovich, so it's a question whether he was going to play tonight. He is going to play for Sacramento, and that's what's driven the Sacramento money so far this morning. I certainly look at the Bulls as being every bit as good as the Kings, okay? Even though the Kings have been winning lately and the Bulls haven't. from a power rating perspective. I don't think 5.5 is the appropriate point spread here. All that said, the reason I didn't pull the trigger is because the Bulls keep losing games like this. And the Bulls on the highway have had a really hard time in the fourth quarter in games where they're trailing. They've not made had good possessions down the stretch. They've not been able to get the stops in these tight games, and that's why the Bulls' record is what they is. So I had a fair bit of concern for Chicago's ability to close out the game. If I was going to take the Bulls, first quarter, first half, no argument here whatsoever.
I love it. I love it. And when you talk about looking forward or being interested in seeing what the records look like on first quarters, that is what we're doing here in both NHL and NBA. We're breaking down every single spot, less spots in NBA than NHL, but first quarters, overs, unders, money lines, spreads, all that stuff. We're going to break it down to see what we are succeeding with. So I'm looking forward to have that as well. I love that breakdown. I'm on Bulls first quarter, money line at plus 129. They've just been sitting over there brooding while the Kings are patting themselves on the back. I'm also taking the points with the Knicks first quarter at plus 5.5, and I've got a correlated play with you. I'm on the Jazz early at plus 140 in the first quarter against the Sixers. And you're right, Sixers keep winning at home, and they aren't covering. There is our NBA card right there. So we have, but what do you think about pulling the trigger on this Hornets spot? I did not pull the trigger. Suns, Hornets. I just feel like the Hornets getting destroyed by Milwaukee. Nice wake-up call after winning that home with the Pistons. The Suns lose to the Mavericks, and then everybody sees, and barely, the Suns played well, got some players back in Baines, Rubio, and then everybody sees the Mavericks beat the Lakers, and then we have this a possible bias to what these teams truly are, and I'm getting 5 points with the Hornets at home, but I was hesitant to pull the trigger. What do you think of this Suns-Hornets spot?
Just real quick on the Knicks, beware that injury report. I'm not sure they're going to have any point guard tonight, and Marcus Morris is an impact, Marcus Morris is not an impact player in the NBA. He's an impact player for the Knicks. I don't know if he's going to go. So a couple of key injuries for New York makes me very concerned about taking the Knicks plus the point. Morris is the guy that hits a shot when the other team went on a 14-0 run. And he's done it like 15 times this season. He gets the Knicks back in the game. So I'm worried about that. I was tempted by Phoenix minus the points. I did not pull the trigger. Again, the Suns have gotten healthy now. Rubio's back. Baines is back. All of a sudden, this Phoenix team that has now lost 3 in a row and 6 out of 7, it's circle the wagon times for Phoenix. And all the quotes coming out of the locker room after their most recent defeat were, in my mind, bet on quotes. I had Phoenix. All right, they had their hot start, they had their injury-related skid, and now I think we may well see a buy sign on the Suns. But I decided I wanted to see the buy. I decided I wanted to see them do it once before I bet on them. And Charlotte's the kind of team. Look. When someone comes to play against Charlotte's not winning and Charlotte's not covering. They're going to be able to take advantage of opportunities. And they've had some hot fourth quarters. They made some runs. They've been better at home than I thought they were going to. And they're coming off a pretty ugly showing. So it has bet on potential for Charlotte here. But when the good teams come to play, the Charlotte's not covering. And that concerns me here because I do think Phoenix comes to play tonight.
All right, I'm going to stay off and stay off. I hear what you're saying about the Knicks. I'm putting faith into Dennis Smith Jr. and Kevin Knox, and maybe that's a terrible blunder, but man, these guys, they could have their careers are in jeopardy, and maybe that's a little too dramatic, but they have not looked good, and here they have a chance to get minutes tonight. And I'm taking them very, very early. 12 minutes. Just give me 12 minutes. 12 minutes is all I need. But I'm excited. It's funny. I'm so close to NHL. The sport means so much to me. I played all my life. The first period plays in NHL give me so much anxiety. But in NBA first quarters, I love it. I don't know why there is a difference there. Okay, let's get into this big Monday nighter, Vikings Seahawks. Tons of guys talking about it in the chat. We have very, very nice weather in Seattle tonight. 42 Fahrenheit. Wind at 1 mile per hour. I had to keep double checking that. I was like, really? There's There's no wind in the Pacific Northwest tonight. It's almost perfect weather. Let's let our guy, Nick Allegretti, roll us into it. Nick Allegretti says, Seattle 18-2 in primetime games under Pete Carroll. Vikings are 2-8 coming off a bye. Am I reading too much into this because I feel like Seahawks should roll? And he says, add one more. Vikings are 2-7 all-time in Seattle, including last year's beatdown. There were threes on the board. Cappers like Dom Ricci got in at 3. Those are gone. Let's see what we're dealing with right now in spreads and totals here on the SBR odds page. There are threes. There is a 3 at Bookmaker. A 3 is at Bookmaker and a 3 is at Bovada. This total at 48.5 is now at 49.5. There were 50s on the board. I initially started thinking, man, so my first thought was the weather's perfect. The Vikings and Seahawks, we have a vividness bias of them having good defenses. They don't really anymore. The Vikings defense is not what we thought it was going to be. Their offense, both offenses can roll. So I was like, okay, maybe the over's in play. Then I went and looked at props at my book. 5.5 TDs is at -120 at my book. I mean, 6 TDs is a ton of TDs. I looked and I was like, just seeing that number, I was like, wow, it makes me want to take the under 5.5 TDs. I want to hear your breakdown very, very much. Vikings, Seahawks, have you made a move? Are you making a move?
I have not made a move. If I was going to make a move, it would be on the home team. It would be on Seattle. And you talked about the primetime games. You talked about the, the Zimmer-Carroll matchups, which are, there's been 3 of them. They're 3-0 in favor of Seattle and 69-23 final margin in those 3 games. But all one-sided in favor of the Seahawks. We talk about the Seahawks defense, and it's a defense that I have concerns with tonight. Let me make it very clear. Jadeveon Clowney not playing for Seattle tonight. I don't think Jaron Reed is going to play. That's their top interior rusher and their top outside rusher, and that's an impact duo for the Seahawks on the defense side of the football. It's probably going to keep me off the game. Certainly one of the reasons why I didn't pull the trigger on Seattle tonight. And when you're talking about the form that Kirk Cousins has been in, Kirk Cousins, okay, has completed 73% of his passes for over 2,000 yards with an 18-1 touchdown to interception ratios over his last 7 starts. That's insane, okay? That's the best numbers of any quarterback in the NFL during that span. And when you have a strong running game, all of a sudden the passing game opens up, and Cousins has been dynamite. I mean dynamite. 162 of 221 over a 7-game span. 9.1 yards per attempt. Those are best QB in the NFL type numbers. I don't think Cousins is the best QB in the NFL, but the Vikings offense has been very, very real during this span. But Seattle's season-long defensive numbers, mediocre. Seattle against the run, their last 5 games, they haven't given up more than 86 rushing yards in any of those games. That includes the 49ers and the Ravens during that span. 2 elite rushing teams. Seattle has shut them down. When you talk about Minnesota's defense, they've been lit up through the air. They gave up 306 to Wentz, 364 to Stafford, 275 to Matt Moore, 397 to Dak Prescott. All right, when you face the Redskins QBs, you don't give up a bunch of yards. Or Brandon Allen, you don't give up a bunch of yards. But Minnesota's pass defense has had their fair share of struggles. Seattle's run defense has better than the season-long numbers would indicate. That gives me... And again, with the injuries for Seattle if the Seahawks had Clowney and Reed in the lineup tonight, I would absolutely be on Seattle. The fact that they're not, maybe I lean over here. And frankly, that 5.5 touchdowns, I ain't betting it under because I think the Seahawks are going to get theirs, and I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota moves the football effectively as well. Lean over. Lean Seahawks. Didn't pull the trigger on either one.
Yeah, the breakdown makes sense. Makes a ton of sense. We have this memory of this Vikings defense being strong, and it just is not anymore. So no move at this point, and the 50s are gone, so somebody's smacking the under. Perfect weather for football in this time of year in the Pacific Northwest. Bob Ruby, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you. Eddie Oler says lean with Ragu field goal game. Ragu says Seattle at home 1-5 against spread. Lean Vikes by 3. thinking about making a move on the money line. Man, okay, I'm going to take a little bit more time on this Monday nighter. We'll talk about it extensively again on the Late Show. Okay, I'm copying and pasting questions. Let's get into college football. So I was off this past week. How did it go for you?
It went okay. It did not go brilliantly. Shoot, I didn't pull up the. Let me get my records over here for exact. I know that we cashed with. Okay, here we go. Ole Miss, yeah, we cashed with Ole Miss plus the 3. That was a good number. If you bet that at kickoff, you did not. We did not cash with East Carolina. They got bombed against Tulsa. We cashed with San Jose State plus the 3. That's another one that we're glad we got down early. We did not cash with Indiana or Illinois. Those weren't any good. So overall, 2 and 3 with the plays here on the show, which is nothing to brag about. That being said, didn't kill us either. But it wasn't a great weekend. And I only made one move so far in college football for this coming Saturday. Plenty of time here. And when we talk about 10 games, we have ample time to delve into all of them in depth. The one move I made Sunday night, and I bet this last night as soon as I saw 6. You know the team. Come on, I've been riding them all year. Central Michigan, minus a 6 against Miami. That's up to 6.5 now. I would not be surprised if it gets to 7 at all. Let me just see. I was looking at it before we came on, and it was still 6.5. Yeah, it's still 6.5 mostly. And you can still find 6s if you shop around for the Chippewas. But, Central has been a real nice moneymaker for me, and I'm a believer in the Chippewas. And at home, I wanted to get down on them right away before the number got to 7. And it may not get to 7, which means I may have, locked up my money a little bit early. But at 6, I didn't think it was going to go down. So I bet Central minus the points. That's the only thing I've bet so far in college football for the week.
Central Michigan minus the points, and you're right. Pinnacle's moved it to 7, 5 dimes, 7, bet online, bet 360. Wow. 6.5 is only available right now at Heritage and Bookmaker. If you guys want Central Michigan, act immediately. Questions coming in, and we will start firing them at you right now. Questions coming in. The first question is from Guitarat 18 says, "Hey Jimmy, I have a question for Teddy Covers." And the questions, as you know, range always, and we got a couple interesting ones off the top. He says, "I have a question for Teddy Covers. At what point is it okay to lay more than minus 110? How should I justify it? Do you ever lay minus 115 or minus 120 on NFL sides?"
I do sometimes, and you justify it by if it's around a key number. If you're talking about you'd rather lay 6.5 120 than 7 110 any day of the week. You'd rather take 7.5 plus 120 than take 7 minus 110, or 7.5 minus 120 minus 110. But a lot of times with so there's all kinds of different factors where you're laying more than 110. We talk about money lines. We talk about halftime lines. So in general, all right, 110 is the way to go. Okay. There are occasions where you're dealing with a key number that I'm willing to lay the minus 120. I rarely it's like baseball season where it gets to, lay over 8.5 minus 130, instead of laying the 9. I tend about 120, 122 is about where I stop, with those. I really don't like, even at the 125 range, we are laying 5 to win 4. That's a little bit high for me. 120, 122 is about where I max out.
That is makes sense. And one thing I've done in NHL in the third year, this will be my third year capping in front of you. I've never taken anything more than minus 135 in the 3 years that I've been down here. Paul Costa has the next question. Says, "Jimmy, could you please ask Teddy if he holds off on early week football bets this time of year with weather being a factor?"
Not necessarily, no. I'm not betting a lot of overs early in the week. But one thing that we do on Monday is take a look at the long-range forecast, and then we track that throughout the course of the week. So the weather games, we want to know about the weather games before anyone else is even paying attention. There's a big storm brewing. It might come for Sunday. All right, yeah. Let's get an under down. The dog's catching doubles. All right, let's get a bet on the dog in this one, for example. And then as the week progresses, you say, all right, I want to hold that position, or no, not so much. But if you're betting especially weather-related totals early, you're going to have a ton of value. You're going to get, 3, 4, 5 points of better of it on totals on a consistent basis. And this is how much work it takes. Look at a long-term forecast on Monday. Make a couple of bets if the forecast says, hey, next weekend there's a storm brewing. Some of them won't be great, but they're not going to kill you. The line's not going to go crazy in the direction. Some of them, there will be bad weather, and you'll end up, wow, I got 5 points, the best of it here. So from a side standpoint, no, I'm not worried about making bets early in the week. From a total standpoint, the only thing I want to make early is an under, unless there's a popular over that is going to be in a dome or something like that is going to get hit. But any game where there's potential weather games, when you're talking about early week bets, unders, okay, overs not as much.
All right,
at this time of the year.
Now we're going to go into the games that the chat is asking about. The first question comes in from Vincent Hawkins. Says, Teddy, what do you think of Baylor, Oklahoma, rotation number 109, 110, 8th ranked Baylor at 6th ranked Oklahoma? Sooners open up a -9, now 7.5 at Pinnacle, 8 everywhere else, and this total sitting at 61. We do see 61.5 now on the board. Teddy, Baylor, Oklahoma.
Well, when we think back to the first meeting between these two teams, and it wasn't long ago, Baylor, pretty dominant first half, pretty outclassed after halftime. That worries me. Now, all the money's come towards the dog here, and Oklahoma's been a money burner down the stretch. All that said, the Sooners figured out Baylor's defense last time and moved the football up and down the field against them. And Okie, when you talk about a betting bandwagon team, Oklahoma doesn't have a huge one right now, certainly in comparison to the Baylor side. But, I'm going to think about this game more. My initial reaction is Oklahoma minus, but I'm not going to lay more than a touchdown with the Sooners. So if we see a 7, I might get interested in the Oklahoma side. Part of me thinks that the Sooners have figured this out and that, this is where Baylor crashes and burns. Part of me really does. But I'm not locking into that position on a Monday. This is a malleable position for me. But I certainly, my initial lean is towards the Sooners minus the points.
Sooners minus the points right now. Next question comes in Reese, and he wants to know what you think of this giant Friday night game. Oregon, Utah. Man, 13th ranked Oregon, 5th ranked Utah. Utah opening up at -5, quickly turns into 6.5. This total stuck at 51. Teddy, big game on Friday night, Oregon, Utah.
I'm not betting against Utah. I mean, flat out, it's Utah or pass. Utah is that good, and Utah's playing for a spot potentially in the playoff, and the Pac-12 really wants to get a team into the playoff this year. Okay, you say, oh, the refs aren't biased. Oh, how did that call go that way? Pac-12 makes a lot of money if Utah wins this game potentially. Much less money if Oregon wins this game. So be aware of that financial perspective. And even though no one's calling up the ref and saying, you better do this, that nod and wink and you understand, how much money it's worth it for us to get Utah into the playoffs. And not that Utah's there, but they lose, Pac-12 gets nobody in again, period. So I don't like to bet bias. I don't like to bet, I'm not talking conspiracy theory here. I'm talking about the ref who's getting paid by the league, and maybe the flags come one way and maybe the flags come another. And it's the kind of game that I don't trust Oregon from the conference doesn't want Oregon to win this game. So that's something to be aware of. And Utah, I mean, I have no hesitation to step in front of Utah. Forget or betting. I'm not stepping in front of Utah, regardless of the nuance of the game. Regardless of the Pac-12 wants Utah to win. Utah's really freaking good. Okay, I stood in front of them a couple times. I paid the price. I haven't stayed in front of them since, and I'm glad. From a defensive standpoint, I think they're the better of the two teams. From a let's run the football standpoint, I think they're the better of the two teams. Oregon's got the speed, but Utah's been able to neutralize that speed. Lean Utes minus before I would take Ducks plus.
That makes a ton of sense. We also have Big Ragu in the chat backing Utah. DJ Big Boss says, I lean Oregon. Give me +7. I love seeing Boss and the Sauce going head-to-head. This Wednesday night, I'll be live with those two guys. We'll definitely be talking about that. Huge games on this card. And the next question comes in from Victor Liu. Says, Teddy, is Ohio State a good bet against Wisconsin this week? Ohio State opening up at minus 17.5, now down to 16.5. 5 dimes taking it to 15.5, as is Heritage. 16's on the board as well. This total sitting at 52.5, although a few books have taken it up. And Heritage is one of them, 54.5. Heritage 2 points higher than Pinnacle right now. That's wild. Rarely see that. Teddy, Victor Liu wondering if he should back Ohio State against Wisconsin.
I don't want to play it. Look, you're not going to find me stepping in front of Ohio State, all right? Not going to happen. If I'm playing an Ohio State game, it's going to be on Ohio State. Do they really have questions to answer? They have no questions to answer. That said, their goal here is win and move on, and it's not a win by margin and crush this team and, we have to do something. And they've already beaten Wisconsin pretty good in the first meeting. And the Badgers, the Badgers defensively, they're solid. But I will not step in front of Ohio State. And Jonathan Taylor, again, this is the type of game where the Buckeyes stop Jonathan Taylor, and then Cohn's got to make plays, and I don't know that he can do that against Ohio State's defense. I will only take Ohio State in this game. And frankly, you talk about teams that are good enough to beat Ohio State. Clemson, maybe. That's about it.
Yeah, they are a very dangerous football team with a possible number 1 overall defensive end there. Okay, let's move on to RZ. So can you ask Teddy what he thinks of my plays that are in his pocket? He's sitting with LSU in his pocket going up against Georgia. LSU opening up at minus 7. Pinnacle still has him at 7. Every other book's moved it to 7.5. This total is sitting at 55.5, has moved down to 55 at 5 times. What do you think of this spot, Georgia LSU?
I'm not going to lay with LSU here. I don't know that I play the game at all, but from a defensive standpoint, amongst the elite teams in college football, you can rank them in a row. And LSU, they don't have the defense that I want to be laying prices like this in games against this caliber of opposition. And it's just that simple. And we know what LSU's offenses look like. It's been tremendous. They can score against anyone. Georgia's defense may well be it's not. Georgia's defense, the best defense they faced all year. And if the SEC's getting 2 in, guess what? Georgia wins this game. LSU might get in anyway. I lean Bulldogs plus. And I would absolutely look in that direction before I laid with LSU this coming weekend.
Bulldogs plus an early lean. Clemson opening up as 28-point favorites, now 29 against Virginia. Do they have any reason to run up the scores and just a win and get out healthy spot for Clemson? Do you think this is too many points?
I don't want the dog here. Okay, Clemson is that good. All right, if you talk about who the best teams in college football are, and notice who I said who I'd be worried about Ohio State playing. It's Clemson. Ohio State and Clemson, they're the 2 best teams right now, and I have zero interest in standing in front of either one of them. Period. Now, Mendenhall's an underdog, sure. We have no problem with that. But and the point spread range, I'm not going to get to the window laying 4 touchdown plus with Clemson this week. But I'm also not getting to the window taking a dog that I don't think they compete in this game. The ACC, more than any of the other Power 5 conferences, was one team good, everyone else mediocre. And everyone else in that conference was very mediocre. So then everyone else includes, obviously, Virginia. That's a game I won't play. I can't see myself getting involved.
All right, we have Teddy Monday to Friday mornings here betting with the bag. So we're going to be going over all these giant games this Saturday and then the Oregon-Utah spot Friday throughout the week. The next questions, Teddy, come in are about NFL. And Jeff Joseph says, Jimmy, very curious on Teddy's take on the Patriots after last night's beatdown. What are you thinking about these Patriots moving forward, Teddy?
Okay, so there's 2 things I want to say. One is that I'm all prepped for college hoops. You can ask me any college hoops you want today. I know we've kind of avoided it. There were a couple of spots I didn't pull, but I'm close to. When it comes to the Patriots, let me start with this. Okay, I had Patriots ranked number 1 in the NFL all year, but I thought they were overvalued at that price point. There's 2 things to consider here. One is I don't think New England's ever going to be as good as their statistical profile indicated. When you look at the schedule of that first half of the campaign, they faced every bad team that they could face, and they faced them all at the worst times, and they dominated every one of those games statistically. When you have a team like that, they tend to be overvalued commodities down the stretch. And now we've seen them blasted twice on the road against good teams. They went to Baltimore and they went to Houston and didn't compete in either game. So I don't look at the Patriots as the most likely team to get the Super Bowl this year. Okay. I think New England is vulnerable. And we talk about where they're vulnerable. Defense has shown some cracks. Brady's shown some cracks. And when you start talking about quarterbacks, not just kind of on the wrong side of 40, but well on the wrong side of 40, I don't care what miracles Tom Brady is doing to his body. Right now, he looks a little worn down, and the passing game isn't working very well, and the running game isn't working very well. So I do have a lot of concerns about New England. And the Patriots, I'm telling you flat out, and it's not anything I haven't said before, but this year's New England team does not get to the Super Bowl. They don't go for the fourth straight season. Someone's going to beat them, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Kansas City, whether it's somebody else. There are better teams in the AFC right now. In the AFC, let alone the NFC. There are better teams in the AFC than the New England Patriots.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was beating myself up 5 weeks ago for not putting that Patriots at 7-1 in my pocket to win the Super Bowl. All I did was take the Chiefs to win the conference and to win the Super Bowl, but now I feel very good about it. Although, I have no Ravens futures, and it makes me uncomfortable, but I feel good about it. Okay, Teddy talking NCAA basketball. We've been very excited about this, and the time is now. So let's let Matt Randall take us in to NCAA basketball. Matt Randall's play of the day, South Dakota at plus 14. So South Dakota shoots the three at an NCAA best 47%. Washington, one of the worst at defending the three, allowing teams to shoot at 38%. And he's also on Delaware minus 5.5, Delaware under 138, North Florida minus 14, and Illinois minus 8. Wow, here we go. Teddy covers NCAA basketball. What looks on this card have drawn your attention?
Okay, so let me first argue, because there's one that I disagree with, at least modestly strongly off of that group that I was talking about, and that's betting against Washington. The Huskies play that Syracuse defense. Hopkins plays that Syracuse defense, that 1-3-1 zone. The matchup zone is really, really difficult for opposing teams on their first look to knock down shots against Washington. And yes, South Dakota's all about. And they're not just a three-point shooting team. They only take, 17 threes a game. They're not one of these teams that's bombing 20, 30, 40 threes a game. But they're not hitting threes against Washington. And that definitely concerns me about South Dakota hanging around in this ballgame. And my numbers show Washington for the season allowing 28% from three-point range. At home, it's 24%. The last 5 games, it's 25%. That's a strong three-point defense. And that defense, I think, is going to give South Dakota trouble. Now, they may cover anyway. But the Huskies, the teams that only face them once a year, the teams in the non-conference play, I don't bet against Washington. That's a tricky defense to figure out. So I'm very tempted by Miami today, plus at Illinois. I don't think the Illini are worthy of laying this price. They've played a schedule. The only step-up game that they had, they got blasted by Arizona. And I know Miami had a couple of step-up games. They had a really rough time in last week. They've also had a little bit of time off. I like Larinaga in this bounce-back spot. I definitely lean Hurricanes plus the points. I was also interested in Clemson plus. So all the quotes from Pitino this offseason, I was reading a bunch of them. When you're doing your college hoops work and you're doing it late, you get some preseason quotes, you get some in-season quotes, and everything prior to the season for Pitino was, this year's team we're loaded with shooters. We're going to be a way better shooting team than last year. And what are they shooting? They're shooting like 40%, and they're not hitting threes, and it's every bit as bad a shooting team as it was a year ago. I'm not a huge Brownell fan, but one thing Clemson does, that team plays nasty defense year in, year out. I don't know that the Gophers are going to build any margin in that game. That feels like a real down-to-the-wire decision. Lean Clemson, lean under in that one. Delaware, I certainly wouldn't talk you out of Delaware Wasn't that one of the other ones you talked about, Delaware against Columbia? Although, interesting to say, Columbia's last 2 games, back-to-back impressive wins and covers. And the fact that this number was as short as it was tells me there may be a little bit of a buy sign here on the team from the Ivy in that one.
I like it. So these are Miami and then leaning to Clemson in the under. Those are leans at this point.
Everything's lean today. I've not actually made a bet on anything in college hoops yet. I'm absolutely leaning Miami. And, at 9, I'll probably get to the window with Miami. Haven't seen one yet. There's 8.5s out there now. I don't know that I get there with Clemson. I was hoping for a little bit more. But I do absolutely lean Clemson and under in that ballgame.
We've got to put a bow on this, but we've had 2 questions come in, so let's just finish with this and bounce. We have a question from our guy Shadow and Mark Unkafer, both asking about whether or not they should back Furman. Furman opening up at -3, now -4 at South Florida. What do you think of this spot?
So Furman was the only way I would look in that ballgame. The more I looked at it, I liked the side for Furman. I did not like the point spread. I thought the number was a little bit rich. And that was it. It was really that simple. Furman's bet on. The markets are seeing that. I remember that from the Alabama game too, where they went to Alabama and was like, "Hey, Furman's bet on," and you hang tight, and lose at the end, and then you lose by 9. I worry about the number in this game. I wouldn't talk you out of the Furman side. It's the only way I would bet it.
Only way he would bet it. There we go. Wow, this is going to be fun. College basketball adding to our docket now every morning. I will make more time for that moving forward. What a treat it is to roll with Teddy Covers, who can be seen here Monday to Friday. And I love having him on this show. Leaning towards Miami, Clemson, and the under in NCAA basketball. In NCAA football, he's got to the window with Central Michigan. If you guys still want the 6.5s, they're only available at 2 books. In the association, he is on the Utah Jazz full game. I took Utah Jazz first quarter money line at +140. Teddy Covers, great to have you back in action. Can't wait to work with you all week long, and excited that college basketball is part of the card now. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's have a big week, my friend.
I would love nothing more than a big week, Jimmy, and I'm glad. At least I hope everything's okay with your family. I know that when you got to go home and it's all rush. There's always a concern there, my friend. So I hope everything's good. Glad to see you back in the fold, and we'll talk again tomorrow.
I love it. There he is. Follow this man on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. Follow him on Twitter. Great follow. There he is, Teddy Covers,